Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear us okay. My name is Faulkner. I want to welcome you to this Smoothwall Cloud Filter webinar. I'm joined by Tom Newton.
Hi.
Who's our VP of Product. And yeah, welcome to the webinar. We're dealing with a very, very sunny day here in Leeds, which is kind of screwing with the camera a little bit. So it's good that we're having a sunny day, but yeah, any problems hearing or seeing us, feel free to stick a message in the Q&A. The Q&A is open for the whole session, so any questions, anything you want to know, just stick it in there and we'll get to that. We will be recording and sharing this session afterwards, so yeah, no need to worry about that. If you miss anything or you have to drop out, we know you're very busy. But yeah, I don't know, Tom, if you want to run us through kind of...
Let's get right on into things. So first of all, before we do introductions, I'll give a shout out to a few of the names that I've seen on the guest list. There's certainly a few OG Smoothwall folks on there, with Drew on there and Barry and a few others who I see whose names I recognise. So thanks for joining, and Matt S there from over East Yorkshire way. I see you, Matt. Thanks for joining, and welcome to everybody else as well, those who I already know and those who have yet to meet. So fantastic to meet you all. As my wonderful colleague Mr. Faulkner said, I am a VP product for all things filter in UK for Smoothwall and the wider company, which, for those of you who don't know, Smoothwall is now part of the Family Zone group. Gives us a much wider set of products to discuss with the UK education sector. Gives us a great deal more clout in the education sector worldwide, and look forward to growing as part of this group. So hope most of you have clocked that we're now part of a bigger organisation. Any questions you might have on that, we're also set up to answer them here. So just feel free to stick them in the Q&A as Rob says. But today we're going to talk about the most boring product on the box. It's called Filter. Absolutely dreadful, isn't it? How dull, Filter. We've all had to do it. We all had to have filters. Everybody who's been in this industry for any length of time has had an involvement with filtering. I mean, what more can we say? What more can you do with filtering? Well, we're gonna find out a little bit about the changes that are happening around filtering in the industry, how Smoothwall tend to address those changes, and how some other people are addressing those changes, and what the differences might be. So we'll go through that. We'll have a look at how a Smoothwall would set up full cloud, how Smoothwall would set up hybrid, and we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing with reporting. Then we'll open up some common challenges of remote and cloud filtering. Then we'll look a little bit more in depth about how the Smoothwall cloud offering and hybrid offering address those challenges, and finally we'll get to your questions right at the end. But do throw those questions in as you think of them, and there's no such thing as a stupid question, as we well know. So if we're all ready, then let's set off. Oh, you've got a poll for everybody, haven't you?
I have, yeah. So I'm going to fire off a quick poll. So, I know that amongst all the attendees we've got here today, some Smoothwall customers, some might already be using cloud filtering or hybrid filtering. We've also got quite a few non-Smoothwall customers as well. Just really interested in knowing, what you're doing at the moment. So are you just using on-premise filtering? So that's where all of your filtering is done by having a box within your school, or sometimes within your map, but essentially somewhere in your kind of infrastructure. Are you doing cloud filtering, so purely relying on cloud to do that, so no hardware anywhere? Are you using a hybrid of those two things? Are you doing none, which hopefully isn't the case, but if it is, don't worry, we've got you back. And I don't know is also an entirely valid answer, because some people use different terms to mean different things. So yeah.
Well, is there a poll option for why is it sunny in Yorkshire? This is not supposed to happen. I'm melting.
It is incredibly warm in this room. So yeah, I don't know why that is.
I don't understand this glowing ball in the sky, do it? It's not our thing at all.
So I can see, I think we've just about reached everyone there. A couple more people just putting in their answers, but thank you very much for everyone for responding. I will end the poll in a couple of seconds and throw up the results on screen.
So I think those I don't know are probably the ringers we have from the marketing department. What do you reckon, Rob?
It could be, yeah. Make sure
you're watching us.
Need to make sure the marketing department are filtered. Right, so end the poll. Let's have a look at the results. So, yeah, overwhelming majority of people are just using on-premise. Very few, small number of people just using cloud. Good chunk, over a third of people with hybrid. And then, yeah, a couple of nones and I don't know, which is obviously entirely fine. You know, it might be that we've got people on here that are DSLs and safeguarding that actually don't know and may not even care where their filtering comes from. But obviously we'll talk about some of the reasons in this webinar why it is important to, you know, ask those questions of your IT department if you aren't in IT yourself. But yeah, I think that's fairly straightforward. So yeah,
somewhat what we expected.
Yeah. Okie doke. Well, thank you for that. Shall we move onwards?
Quickly on. I never answered the poll, Rob. How dreadful. So cloud filtering, and it means so much. Ultimately, people talk about cloud filtering. They mean I don't have a box on site in my school or map that's doing filtering. And that's probably about as far as we can come with cloud filtering, where we can get everybody to agree on a definition. I think that's probably a useful definition. Everything else is likely to be a not very useful definition and is out there to confuse people or muddy the waters.
Because when we hear about, you know, mats that may have boxes somewhere, as far as their schools are concerned, they're getting a cloud system. They're getting filtering that is not within their school. You know, there's no hardware. Similarly, you know, we have lots of partners who provide the same sort of thing. You know, local authorities, you know, used to do a lot of that as well, where, you know, it's a cloud, you know, cloud is very much a question of perspective, you know, where you are versus where your filtering happens.
And that's, as Rob says, absolutely fine. All those things, you know, roughly do align to your filtering done in the cloud. And the three ones we've listed here as common ways to see this happen are agent-based filters. So what that means is when you've got something on the device that you're using that's doing the job of filtering, and that filtering then follows you around the device, clearly your filtered laptop then doesn't need something at the edge of the network to do filtering. And that filtering will follow that device wherever you might take it, whether it's back home or into the local Starbucks or somewhere a bit cooler. DNS filters tend to be affixed to a device at the edge of your network. So weirdly, despite the fact that them being sort of the lightest touch of all filters, they do need something at the edge of your network to be a DNS server. DNS filters generally don't then give that mobility aspect when we're talking about cloud filtering. So a DNS filter, such as, you know, something like Cisco Umbrella, which is what the DFE used, can have an agent on the device and hook into the device, but often you see it just applied at a network level and it doesn't follow devices home. But DNS filters being the lightest touch sort of filter and as such involving almost nothing at the network level. And then there's filtering done by your ISP. So sometimes, as Rob alluded to, this might be larger multi-academy trusts basically being their own ISP and running their own data centers. That does happen. But commonly there are ISPs such as Exa Networks, for example, who are one of our local partners here, who will do filtering within their network. And that filtering then spreads out into the school, and there's almost an extension of the school's network into the ISP. It means nothing happens on the school's premises, and all of those schools in that multi-academy trust could benefit from that same filtering, and that filter hardware, whatever it might be, the tin that's doing the job of filtering is managed by somebody else. So very much falls into that category of cloud filtering. It's a good way to work. A lot of ISP filtering that counts as cloud filtering, however, won't also solve your mobility problems. So when you're thinking about that, it's also thinking, if I take the device out of school and as such it's no longer going through that same ISP connection, is that still going to be filtered? If not, am I all right with that? If I want it to be filtered, how am I going to manage that? It's a good way of filtering though, and it can give some of the strong benefits of on-site systems alongside the benefit of not having a system on site. So it can be really, really, really effective. So we need to understand the needs of a school and what each of these types can perhaps offer.
And I think that, through COVID, the term cloud very much got combined with the term remote filtering. And, as Tom said, in a lot of cases, they are one and the same thing. If you're doing cloud filtering, you're doing remote filtering, but it is really crucial to look at what is that type of cloud filtering, because if it's, as Tom said, if it's done by the ISP, well, that's only going to be filtered when you're on the ISP. So at home, you're not getting that. So yeah, people do use those terms interchangeably, cloud and remote filtering. But yeah, there's nuance to that you really need to look at when you're choosing how you're going to do things.
And you need to look at what do you want out of this? Why are you thinking about cloud? That's important. If it's simply, I don't want any boxes on site, well, perhaps you've still got a box on site at the edge of your network. Can that box at the edge of your network be leveraged to do anything useful in the filtering world? Will that satisfy your requirements very easily there? Maybe when you're thinking about cloud filtering, you're actually thinking, I want students to be filtered when they go home. So cloud for the sake of cloud, maybe not a lot of fun, but thinking about what your requirements are, whether those requirements are to simplify management, whether those requirements are for remote filtering, whether both of those are on your shopping list. Think about that, then think about the type of filtering that will meet those requirements.
Yeah.
I pressed space bar and it didn't move. Anyway, there we go. Myself and PowerPoint, we don't get on, do we, Rob?
So yeah, let's have a quick look at what these things mean in a Smoothwall world. Different cloud filters operate in different ways, but this is how we do it, and this is why we do it. So when we talk about a hybrid filter, this tends to be the most popular because either people have come from an already existing on-premise Smoothwall and want to extend that out to the cloud. You see a huge amount of this happen during COVID, but there are still a lot of people out there that are just using the on-premise. And what this effectively does is it glues on the cloud almost onto the side of your on-premise so that you then get the best of both worlds. So the way that works is that you have your existing on-premise box, which usually sat on the edge of your network, possibly your firewall as well, doesn't have to be, but maybe, or you might have a third-party firewall, and all of your school traffic's going through there. But what that's also doing is communicating with our cloud service. So that cloud service is almost like a copy of all of your configuration and your settings that exist in the cloud. So that then anybody or any device that you install the cloud filter client onto will synchronize that information with the cloud. So whether that's a device at school or a device at home, or anywhere else for that matter, it's getting the same filtering as the on-premise device. So if I've got my Windows device, I take it home, it's going to then talk to the cloud service and say, what's my policy? What needs to be blocked? What needs to be allowed? And then once I've done some browsing, it'll be sending back that log data around what I've been doing. But the really crucial thing and the really great thing about the Smoothwall Cloud Filter is it filters it right there on that device. So it's not sending, if I'm watching Netflix, it's not sending all of the Netflix traffic to a Smoothwall system. It's just communicating directly with Netflix. So you'll get the full bandwidth of whatever connection you've got, because it's doing that filtering actually on that device.
So I'm not paying twice for that bandwidth, am I, Rob? I'm not getting extra latency.
No, no latency at all from the network level. And yeah, you're talking directly to it. So it's you could be taking that laptop to the other side of the world and you'll be getting the same internet experience as someone sat next to you. You're not sending all that traffic back to the UK or wherever.
In fairness, I did miss out on my previous slide, the sorts of cloud filter, which is someone has basically taken a traditional proxy and whacked it into AWS or DigitalOcean or one of the hosting providers and is expecting you to trombone all your traffic through. The reason I missed that one off is because it's so dumb, I refuse to put it on there. And that's, it's part of why, of course, we designed the Smoothwall cloud filter not to do that. Your modern, everything else is moving to the cloud. This is Google Slides. This is 2023, folks. It's stuff that's edited in a web browser, but that needs low latency.
Yeah,
and you can't get low latency if you're pumping traffic through a remote server.
Yeah, exactly. So that you think about Smoothwall cloud filter. Really, cloud filter is not the thing in the cloud. It's the thing on the device. All the cloud is doing is just passing backwards and forwards policy and logs. That's all it's doing. But it's making sure that your on-premise device is using the same policy, has access to the same log data, that's all going into the same place, so that you get an equivalent experience if you're at home versus at school. You might also actually say, I don't want an equivalent experience. I want to allow games and video streaming outside of school, but on site at school, they're blocked. You can still do that. But it's all about really that mobility side. It doesn't matter where you are, how you're connected, you're getting the same quality of filtering. You're still, keeping to the school's acceptable use policy. You've still got the safeguarding protection so that, if that student's looking at anything, in terms of their web searches and things like that, that might be concerning, you're still getting those alerts. The one kind of great thing about this model is that your on-premise device is almost like a kind of sweeper. So if you imagine that Windows laptop that I took home, it's got the cloud filter on, it's doing all of its filtering. When I bring that back to school, it may as well continue to do its filtering locally. It's going to save pressure off that on-premise device because that on-premise device will know that my laptop has got filtering on it. So it'll say, okay, great. I don't need to then filter you because I already know that laptop is doing its own filtering. But what the on-premise device will do then is it will sweep up anything that hasn't got the cloud filter installed. So you might have obviously things like printers and servers and all weird and wonderful stuff that wouldn't have the cloud filter on. They'll still get filtered by the on-premise device, but anybody with the cloud filter, it will know and it will be able to take care of, basically just allowing that straight through because it knows it's being looked after.
And printers are awful for going on porn. I've had some real dirty printers in my time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe we should be more worried about smart boards, but anyway.
Smart boards, smart TVs. Yeah, that's probably more like it. So that's where we've got on the bottom right. Your filtered traffic, your people with the cloud filter, they're just going to go straight out. Your unfiltered traffic will get swept up by the on-premise device. Maybe things like BYOD as well. Again, you can't really expect a student with their own personal phone to install the cloud filter onto it. I wouldn't suggest you do that anyway, because, you need a managed device like a Windows that's managed by Intune or Active Directory.
Some people would suggest that, Rob, and I'm mentioning no names here. Some people would suggest that those people would be wrong.
Yeah, you really want to have a device that you've got control over to stop tampering with that filter and things like that. The best one out there is Chrome. Chrome is so easy to, Chromebooks, so easy to deploy cloud filter to. You can deploy thousands of devices in a couple of minutes. So that's what we mean by hybrid, really, where you've got filtering happening in two different ways. You've got the on-premise that's doing the kind of sweeping. You've got the cloud filter that's doing the on-device filtering. Therefore, it doesn't matter where you go, it's filtered.
And of course, you can do that hybrid filtering in concert with an internet service provider. So if we wanted to take things, remember cloud is this overloaded term that means a billion things. But if one of our aims was to move boxes off our individual school premises, if we had an ISP that was connecting all of our schools in a multi-academy trust, we could happily, given the right ISP partner, shift those boxes a little further north, a little closer toward the internet, keeping some of the same advantages like being able to do authentication with BYO, but losing those devices off-site, losing the management of the physical hardware on which those devices reside. Right, so we change. We put now cloud filter. We've changed some words. It's exciting. The diagrams are so much fun. Folks.
So if we start talking about a model where there is no on-premise device, we have this kind of, cloud filter again on every single device that we can possibly put it onto, but inevitably, even in that case, you will still have these legacy devices, BYOD, printers, smartboards, smart TVs, Amazon Echo devices, whatever it is, there's always going to be weird and wonderful things on the network. We know that, people in school will come to IT and say, hey, I bought 100 of these things. And you look at them and you go, okay, what am I supposed to do with that? How do I make sure that, whoever's on that device is as protected as possible, is safe and secure? So that's why we're introducing a DNS filter that will sit alongside your firewall. So, DNS is there as a very basic level of protection, but it does the job in terms of making sure that some of these kind of legacy devices still are blocked from the real nasty stuff on the internet that we don't want them getting to. But the cloud filter still operates in exactly the same way, where that's going to be giving you that consistent experience wherever you are.
We would suggest that DNS filtering isn't really suitable for student learning devices. We might put a DNS filter on with a fairly stringent policy for BYO, because those DNS filters are such a brutal tool. I'm not a huge fan of them myself. Something, in the modern world, they may have their place here and there, where we need to infill some of the devices we otherwise couldn't reach. Our motto here is, if you want to do good filtering, you've got to either own the device or own the network. In this situation, we can't own the device because it's potentially BYO. We can't own the network because we don't have a device on the network that's under our control. So the best we can do is own DNS. That does mean we've only got domain level filtering. That means we've probably got limited reporting, limited understanding of how many times a user visits a site. Because of course, once they've resolved DNS one time, that's cached locally. That's done with. So DNS probably not suitable for student learning devices. But if you've got sixth formers bringing in their own devices, and they're not for teaching and learning, well, maybe we give a fairly stringent DNS policy to stop them going on the worst stuff on the internet and keeping them on school Wi-Fi rather than them being on 4G, 5G and getting where they like. We've always got to think when we're filtering particularly students' own devices, they've got options. Yeah, they've got options when they're on school devices. Their options are to move off school devices, and then their option is to move that device of their own off the school network. The more we drive them down that path, the less access our safeguarding folks have got to intervene, the less safe everybody is. So there is a degree to which we need to be real careful not to overblock on our networks and to keep people using the devices that we can see more easily.
Yeah, I mean, so I got gig fibre at home yesterday.
Lucky you.
Yeah, 40 quid a month. Who would have thought you'd get gig fibre for 40 quid a month?
Still 70 down will do, mate.
Yeah. But that came with a router. I'm not going to say who it's by, but that had options in there for content filtering. Now it calls it content filtering. We know what that is. That's a DNS filter, almost certainly in there. It's good as a blunt, simple tool to provide a blanket layer of protection, but it's not the level of filtering that you really want to be using on those main student devices, which is what the cloud filter's for, really. Cloud filter's going to give you that deep content filtering of every page request, and be able to filter them to the highest possible standard.
Reporting, great fun. I'll just talk a little about the general direction that we're taking with reporting in Smoothwall. Reporting is one of those workloads that it is sensible to move up into the cloud. We know that doing your reporting on your on-premise system which is tuned for doing web filtering, doesn't always bring the fastest results back. And if you're trying to run a report in the middle of the afternoon when your web filter is under heavy use doing its primary role, which is what, filtering the web, it can be a little slower than we'd hope. In addition, we now have a bunch of filtering devices out there that may not be in school. So trying to bring all their logs back to a central point in the school or in that data center probably isn't the smartest move anyone could make. So we are starting that process of moving logging and reporting into the cloud. Some of you may have used the cloud reporting tools. We're simplifying these. You know, way back in the day when Smoothwall was young and filtering was entirely the purview of IT, reporting was entirely the purview of IT as well. It was perfectly okay for us to say, hey, what's Rob been doing last Thursday? In fact, we probably didn't know it was Rob at that time. We probably had an IP address for a machine in a computing lab. You know, in those days, it was all right to pull back all of the URLs visited. It's going to be looked at by an IT person. They could understand that. They know the web. You know, we can look at these things and work out whether there's a risk or not. In a modern environment, it's more likely to be someone from the safeguarding team who wants to know what a student's been doing. And that means we shouldn't be throwing every bit of data in the kitchen sink at them. That means we should be removing some of the boring stuff, some of the stuff that makes the internet work. We know it has to be there, we know why it's there, but it really isn't relevant. So we're changing the way we do reports to be something much simpler and actually present less data, but more meaningful data. So for those of you who haven't had a look at the new reporting in the cloud, I would just name drop it right now. Talk to your CSM if you're an existing Smoothwall customer to have a look at the new system. It is evolving rapidly.
I think one of the good things with the cloud and the hybrid approach is that it doesn't matter where your filtering takes place. All of your logs all come back to the same place, whether that's the cloud reporting or back to the on-premise. So you've never got a situation where you've got to run reports in two different places to cover their off-site activity versus their on-site activity.
But yeah, we see ultimately the drift of this is in the direction of the cloud. You know, additionally, we've got then the capability for filtering to be combine the logs with our other cloud products, such as the monitor product. Rob, challenges of remote and cloud filtering.
Yeah, so maybe these are some of the things that you're thinking about. You know, some devices are not suitable with cloud. So, you know, speaking about our own cloud filter, we do this for Windows devices. We do it for Chrome OS devices, for Macs and for iPads. But as I mentioned, there will be some other devices. Maybe you've got Android tablets, maybe there's some other Kindles and things like that, where you might need to think about what's the strategy around those. You know, are these things that will never be leaving the building and therefore a hybrid on-premise or a DNS filter would be fine? If they are leaving the building and going off-site, then, you know, how do we manage the risk associated with those? The concerns around filtering the devices that go home, you know, I think we all appreciate that if the school provides that device, that there's a kind of responsibility to make sure it's safe wherever it is. So, you know, making sure that filtering happens and happens consistently when it goes home is something that obviously is the whole reason why we're talking about the remote filtering. Inconsistent filtering in the cloud, you know, we see this sometimes, and this is a little bit like the juggling two filters below. You know, during COVID, there were a lot of people that were managing two different filters. Perhaps it was the filtering provided by the DFE on those DFE devices versus their existing filter. Maybe there was a rush to just implement something, and that was, you know, obviously totally appropriate at the time. But, you know, you want to make sure that you've got a consistent experience, you know, that teachers can plan lessons and, you know, have the same expectation around what students will and won't be able to do, regardless of where they are.
We just had a question in, Rob. I was just checking out the questions whilst doing that. One of the questions was, Tom, can you turn off your Teams notifications because they're annoying people? Sorry, folks, I forgot to mute my laptop. That was foolish of me. But we have a question here about someone saying they've got Smoothwall on site and Senso for offsite, planning to move offsite devices to Smoothwall Cloud. I think that talks very much to this exact problem of you've got two filters. Double filtering is unpleasant. And sadly, from Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous Attendee, the actual question part appears to be cut off. But I say, thinking about deploying via GPO and then removing sensor filters from devices once Smoothwall Cloud is working on that device, that's a sensible move. That would work. But if you did have a bit more question on the end of that, please ask it another question because you seem to be cut off.
Thank you for that. So we've also got time budget constraints, of course. We've all got time and budget to manage. So, whether it's, if you are having two filters, you've not only got the cost of those two filters, but you've got the time it takes to manage those, the brain space it occupies thinking about how two different things work. That's obviously a concern. And you want full cloud, but you don't want to leave your on-premise environment. I think that some people are kind of full guns blazing on cloud and will quite happily migrate as much stuff as possible. Some people like the comfort and the kind of the good feeling it gets about looking in a server room and seeing that things are working. Totally get that. That's hopefully something that, through this kind of hybrid model, you can kind of get the best of both worlds there.
Okay. So then, very briefly, I think, because we've covered a lot of this, why Smoothwall Cloud over some of the other cloud offerings? And we complain once again that cloud means a million different things, but it's the only web filter to protect students with genuine 100% real-time filtering. As Mr. Faulkner pointed out, everybody and his grandmother's dog is calling things a content filter these days. They may not mean content filter in the case of Rob's unnamed router at the edge of his broadband network. That most assuredly means a DNS filter. That most certainly means just a list of domains which we're blocking and domains which we aren't blocking. When we talk content filter, we say, when you are on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, is that individual page that's full of user-generated content that might have changed because I've logged in or not, that might change tomorrow and might be different again to what it was yesterday. Is that page that you're seeing getting looked at in real time? The actual content that particular student is downloading, is that getting inspected? The Smoothwall filter is the only filter with genuine 100% real-time content filtering. We can extend our web filtering protection on and off school premises. We say the filter stays with the device. Just because it says cloud on the box does not mean it also provides protection off premises. And we can take that cloud deployment with no on-premise hardware if needed, but it is, as we say, hybrid option for full flexibility. We get that. As Rob said, there is a safety in having something at the edge of your network looking after all network traffic. We are strong believers in hybrid. This makes us pretty unusual. I mean, I think we're pretty unusual in many ways, to be fair. But
speak for yourself.
This makes us pretty unusual in that we are committed to providing both types. And as far as we're concerned, folks who come to us and say, I want to filter 500 young people, can filter 499 of them with the cloud and one with on-prem, or 499 with on-prem and one with cloud, or any mixture in between those places. And we are absolutely happy to support that. And that's not going to make your life any harder or easier because of the route you choose. It's your choice. It's your work to balance, your understanding of what you need to balance. We don't force that upon Smoothwall users. We have that bespoke and detailed reporting at user domain and category levels. We store everything. We show relatively small parts of that to make it easy to digest, but everything is stored. for compliance purposes, we store every single transaction. So if you were asked by law enforcement in 2 months' time what was going on, then you've got that data there with complete visibility of who has that request against their name. Because when you've got an agent on the device, it's far simpler than in any other form of filtering to understand who's using that device, because you can ask the operating system, dear operating system, who is using this device? And that's usually pretty accurate because they've typed their password in on it or scanned their fingerprint on their way into that device. So complete visibility of users. As Rob said, quick installation, something like Chromebooks. You can get Cloud Filter out to 1,000 Chromebooks in under 5 minutes. And because of that, it scales easily. We are top slicing here a very, very, very tiny amount of CPU time to do that filtering on each device. To put it into context, the engineers who first built this were given to test a underpowered Celeron Chromebook with 2 gigs of RAM and told to make it work on that, and that was their test device. And if they complained that it was slow, it was their problem, not ours. It's a very efficient filter, but because it's top slicing those tiny amounts of CPU off everybody's device, as you scale your number of devices, it scales up. You don't need to buy a new tin at the edge of your network. And because of that filtering undertaken on device, not relying in the instant on something in the cloud, so it relies on the cloud obviously to pull new configs and to pull new rule lists. It relies on the cloud to send logs, but it doesn't rely in the instant of doing filtering on anything in the cloud. If the cloud happens to go away for whatever reason, and all of us know that it does, and it often does without warning. Look at things like the Cloudflare outage last year. Azure have had a couple of big outages. Amazon had a nasty one when it was really hot 2 years ago, and half of London's data centers melted. I know how they feel, but the cloud can go away for whatever reason through one of the large providers having a problem, or indeed through an enterprising young person fiddling with their router at home to make the cloud disappear. With the Smoothwall model of filtering, the filtering still happens. They can still get on the internet, teaching and learning is not disrupted, and the filtering still happens. Did we mention the filtering still happens? That's an important one to get across.
It is, yeah.
We don't want to fail open when there's a failure in the cloud, because of course it's a safeguarding issue.
We'll just stay on that slide because we've got 16 questions now. So I know we had a slide with a couple of questions we got beforehand, but maybe if we go through these 16.
Go on, do you want to pick one, Rob?
Yeah, so would the cloud service still act as a firewall? No, it wouldn't. So the cloud filter is just looking at the web filtering. So if it's at school, you'd still need to have a firewall of some description at the school. It wouldn't need to be a very complex firewall depending on your needs. Certainly wouldn't need any content filtering. And at home, those devices are still presumably connecting to the internet through a home firewall router type thing. But yeah, the cloud filter itself is just filtering, not firewall.
I think if you want to take firewall into the cloud and you really want to have almost nothing in the school other than a few Wi-Fi controllers, which is pretty sensible in some ways, the place to do that is to go and talk to one of those partners who can provide you connectivity, extend their network into yours and yours into theirs. And as such, they can put the firewall a little nearer the breakout to the internet in their data centers. That's one way to not have to have a firewall to manage in the school. If I pick off Stuart's question, which is how quickly will the on-prem device sync with the cloud service? So the on-prem device syncs with the cloud service immediately once you have logged out of the on-premise device. So as soon as you make some changes on-prem, hit log out, then we decide at that point you've probably finished making changes, so those go up to the cloud. If you've made changes in the cloud and you're waiting for those to come back down to the on-premise device, that's checks every 15 minutes for that.
Question from different Stuart with a U, not Stuart with a W. Does the cloud filter remove the need for SSL decryption man in the middle? What a great question. You are correct that it does remove the need for it, which is, I'm sure anybody that's had to deal with SL certificates is a massive, massive plus. The cloud filter is operating on that device within the browser. So it actually sees what the user sees. It's not a network level device where it only sees encrypted packets and therefore needs to do man in the middle. Because it's in the browser, it sees exactly what's rendered to the user without the need to do any decryption or re-encryption therein.
Yeah, once again, there are agent-based filters and there are agent-based filters, and some folks do them in different ways. They're not wrong. There's not really a wrong way and a right way to do it necessarily. You know, the Smoothwall way is to do it in browser. That does mean you have to control which browsers folks can use. So this does need to be a managed device, but it does mean we've no need for MITM. There are those agents out there that will sit on device and they will do filtering at a network level, and they'll be effectively MITMing there and then on that device. You know, slight advantage perhaps in they can check that the certificate exists and push that certificate, but all the sort of networky stuff that makes MITM hard, such as protocols like Quick that really hate being MITMed, still exists there. And instead of having, one set of MITM problems at a network level filter, you've got 1,000 set of MITM problems on every Windows device. Add to that you can't get that network level sort of access on a Chromebook, and then you're ending up with, or an iPad, then you're ending up with a couple of different operating systems with different types of filtering operating in different ways. We felt that in browser was the future-proof way forward because MITM has a shelf life. So, Rob, do you want to pick another one?
Yeah, so there's another question around, is it possible to see from the on-premise Smoothwall filter which devices have connected to the cloud? So it's not possible to see that from the on-premise filter. I think you can maybe slightly see which cloud device have connected in cloud, but I know this is something that we're working on through our new device management for that.
Yeah, we're working on that right now. You just have to run a report and see what devices exist.
Yeah.
Which will show any devices that have done any filtering and sent it back. But we recognise that that's something that folks want to know is, hey, I pushed this out, did to 2,000 devices, are the 2,000 devices being filtered? And sort of slightly aggravatingly, we can tell that in our backend systems, but we don't yet present it. But it is coming soon. So,
and I think one potentially confusing point we haven't talked about is the relationship between the cloud portal and the cloud filter. So the cloud portal is the place in the cloud that you go to manage your Smoothwall filtering configuration and other Smoothwall products. So Smoothwall Monitor, if you're using that, is in there, Record Manager and so on. The idea is that place will become the only place you go to manage your filtering. So the on-premise user interface will gradually, have all of its functionality moved to the cloud, just because it's a lot easier for us to manage, maintain, and update a cloud-based system rather than tens of thousands of ones running on boxes all over the country. So yeah, sometimes, people talk about the cloud. Again, it's such a confusing term, but there's the cloud filter and there's also the cloud portal, which is the management of all of that stuff. And that again links in with the on-premise. So you change a policy in the cloud portal, it updates on your on-premise and vice versa.
I think we've talked about that. We've talked about cloud service acting as a firewall, and anonymous attendee asked, does Smoothwall provide a firewall and DNS? And somebody else says, does Smoothwall provide a firewall and DNS box to install for cloud filtering? So Smoothwall provides an on-premise firewall which you can use for doing simple filtering at the edge if you want to do that. Obviously, if you've got the Smoothwall on-prem firewall, we don't need to do anything as brutal as DNS filtering because we've got a more capable filter on board. Even if we're not doing MITM, it's still more capable than a DNS filter. So yes, you can have a Smoothwall firewall at the edge of your school if you so wish. It's cost effective. way of doing things. And we can also provide that level of DNS filtering for a catch-all as well if you've got somebody else's firewall. Somebody else has asked a very cunning question about, are we considering pulling data in from those third-party firewalls so we can let the third-party firewall do filtering for BYO and pull that data into our reporting? We haven't been, but that's a really awesome idea. So I thank you for that idea. And if we do that, I'll make sure to give you a shout out for stealing your idea, because it's a fantastic one.
And obviously with the DNS, you can put that onto any firewall or any, it wouldn't necessarily even need to be done on a firewall. It can be done in a DHCP server or wherever. All you're doing is setting the DNS server to our address on those devices.
And you will get some reporting. We haven't got it quite rolled out yet, but there'll be some statistic reporting for DNS saying, hey, people are visiting these sites. So let's have a look through some of the other ones. Hopefully I've ticked off all the ones we've done. Is the Chromebook Cloud Client downloadable from the Play Store? Yes, it is. It's in the Play Store, but it's invisible in the Play Store. So if you search our knowledge base articles, you'll find its ID.
It's the Chrome Web Store, not the Play Store. The Play Store's Android apps. The Chrome Web Store is Chrome extensions.
Well differentiated, Mr. Faulkner. Yes, it is the Chrome Store rather than the web store. It's also on the Microsoft Edge Store. Just the same. We probably over the next 6 months will start serving it from our own store rather than Google's, primarily because Google offer us ways to sort of beta test new clients, but the way they offer us to beta test new clients is, hey, you can put this out to 10% of your users, which means 10% in Stuart's school and 10% in Charlie's school, which is not super effective, because if there were a big problem, then you'd both get it. If there was some small problem, then it would probably be small enough that neither of you would notice it. And us betaing something like that would be hard and they're difficult to roll back. So we'll probably start serving from our own store in about 6 months' time, such that we can put individual schools onto different versions. So if someone has a problem or a new feature that they've requested and we want to roll it out to them first, that we can get a bit more power like that.
But you'll still be able to roll that out through the Google Admin Console or through an MDM. You know, you can roll it out through Intune. If you're using Intune to manage Chromebooks. So yeah, you'll still be able to do that.
Yeah, we won't make it so you have to jump through any hoops. That is number one on our list of things not to do.
So there's one here about using real-time reporting and what's the lag. So there's two different ways that real-time reporting works with cloud. One is where you're doing real-time reporting on a cloud filter client. And that is about as near real time as you'll get, because it almost opens up a little conversation with that client. So rather than waiting for it to send its logs, it will connect into that client and stream what's happening right then from that. With the on-premise, I'm looking over to Tom and saying...
It is on our roadmap to go and find a direct connection to on-premise. So right now there's a lag of, I think, around 30 minutes with on-prem and around 5 minutes with the cloud device going up into the reporting platform. We're kind of separating out real-time reporting from historic reporting, because the two are quite different. With real-time reporting, we only want to see now data and we kind of throw it away pretty quickly. We want to see usually data from a single user. So fairly shortly, you will see the ability for our cloud portal to say, hey, dear on-prem device or devices that might exist in a school, who's filtering Rob Faulkner right now? And you stream his data live to me. So we'll be building that in. Right now, you can do that. If Rob was out with an agent on his laptop, I could say, hey, all agents, can you tell me which one of you has a Rob Faulkner logged in? And the agent puts his or her hand up and says, hey, that was me, and starts, as Rob said, streaming directly back into the real-time log viewer. So you're seeing exactly what that device is doing at any given time.
And if you using cloud reporting, you can still use the real-time log viewer on the on-premise box, and it will show you what's going on. Is that right?
So your on-prem users,
Yeah.
What your cloud users, because that would be too low.
We've got 25 questions still to get through in 10 minutes, so
Crack on.
we'll pick up the pace a little bit.
Will the new simplified reporting be visible through on-prem Smoothwall? No, it won't. It will be cloud only, but over time you'll all get access to that. Will Smoothwall Cloud help with authentication on AADs joined Surface Pros? It should, yes. If you've been constantly prompted to log in, please do come talk to your CSM. Let's get you onto the agent-based filtering on that. I think that would help a lot.
Yeah, 100%.
Yes, the user's activity is synced to on-site, so you can get that detailed reporting as well. Are there any news for iOS devices filtering off-site? I'm aware of the Smoothwall browser option, but wondering if you guys have come up with something else, not limiting the users to the Smoothwall browser. We are working on a simpler browser system for iOS. The reason we have a Smoothwall browser for iOS is that's the only way to do that true content filtering that we think is so important. It's also the only way to be able to do any sort of monitoring. So when folks have got Smoothwall Monitor, that browser is a surefire way to get that working. We understand that some folks would like a lighter touch on iPad. So we will be bringing in something towards the end of this year where on iPad you can have a kind of light touch DNS level, but fully reported, fully authenticated filter. It won't do anything past the slash, it won't do anything contenty, but it's there. But yeah, I would say do try out the Smoothwall browser if you haven't. It is 100% fully functional and featured. It's a fork of Firefox, so it's a really good browser. And there's actually some features on there, like being able to set the school homepage and things like that that you can't do in MDM on Safari.
Got a question, is the client a browser plugin or installed system service? Currently it is a browser plugin. On Windows there is a companion service that's used to help us out with a couple of little things to do with authentication, but we have some cunning plans there that we will talk about more in the future.
So we've had occasions where the student block email has come through to us, but instead of giving the login name, it just shows the group students and the IP address of the device. That means you've probably got an authentication problem somewhere. Moving to those filtering to the agent might be a good way to answer that authentication. I would strongly suggest anonymous attendee stick a support ticket in and feel free to name drop myself or Mr. Faulkner in that and say we were on the webinar. Can you help? And we'll keep a track of your support ticket and make sure you get that answered. So running a hybrid setup but still get flags on the report that only show the IP, that may mean you're getting double filtered. So again, stick a support ticket in. Chances are it's because you're getting double filtered and the Smoothwall on-prem device is the first to pick up the infraction because it's through a content filter, and the Smoothwall on-prem device probably doesn't know who the student is, and so is giving an IP address. Whereas if we allow that browser to go straight through the Smoothwall on-prem device, then that content filtering action will happen on device. We'll know who the user is, and you'll get the proper answer. But a few setup wrinkles there by the sounds of things that we just need to get to the bottom of.
Yeah. I'm going to smash through a couple of questions. How's the client authenticating with the cloud filter? Is it NTLM Kerberos? Blah, blah, blah. The client itself, because it runs in the browser, it knows who you are from the logged in user session, so it doesn't need to do any authentication. It trusts that the operating system has already done that, which is why we only really recommend it's used on managed devices. But it's much, much simpler when you're doing that kind of stuff. Let's have a look.
Rob, can you pick up, does the cloud filter inspect Teams or other chat apps? That's definitely one for you, isn't it?
Yeah, so it will do if it's done through the browser, but it's also thinking about what are the actual risks that we're managing there, because Teams and chats are less about web activity in terms of what websites they're going to. They are more about what's the content of those conversations. And that's really where Monitor comes in, because the biggest safeguarding risk in chat is the contents of those chat conversations, who they're chatting with, what they're saying, are they exchanging information that they shouldn't be. So that's really where monitoring comes in, less so the web filtering. How's the browser plugin managed? Updates, what happens if it breaks? So yes, it's automatically updating from that Chrome Web Store or the Edge Web Store. What happens if it breaks? Well, the architecture of that is so that it is very, very fault tolerant. As Tom said earlier, even if there is a complete cloud outage, it will still continue to filter, either with the last policy it received or with a baseline safe config. Yeah, that's good to know.
So let's have a look, see if there's any other ones we could pick off. So yeah, you guys mentioned Chromebook a lot. I manage 600 iPads. Please give a shout out to your customer service manager, and let's get ourselves on a call and we'll show you the iPad client. It's worked really well for a lot of customers, from some very small primaries right through to big councils. So it should be great for you. Give us a call.
Yeah, we've got our all browsers supported. So the cloud filter, it supports Chrome and Edge. With the on-premise, that will filter any device, as will the DNS filter. But in terms of devices that are going home, that's in Chrome and Edge.
What about people who live there? Presuming Smoothwall device is logged on, will the device then not sync? If you're leaving it logged on to look at things like the dashboards, we can make you a special user for doing that. That won't worry about being synced or not. But again, if you want a fuller answer, do ping through to your CSM and they'll grab hold of me. We'll have a chat later on.
I'm going to have to stop you, Tom, because we do have one more poll that we just need to quickly get through. So if you wouldn't mind just going onto the screen that says poll.
I will go onto the screen that says poll.
I don't know what difference that makes, but we're there. Yeah, really just want to know if you want us to get in touch to maybe give you some costs or some more information about Smoothwall Cloud Filter. Yeah, so that we can help you anymore.
And for those of your existing Smoothwall customers, generally go cloud with no extra cost involved. So do feel free to answer yes to that, even if you've not necessarily wanting to actually look at acquiring something right now, because you may find that you've got something within your license already that you can use.
Okay, so just while we're getting through that last one, I'll give you 2 more questions, Tom, if you can get through them quickly.
Go on.
Right, hold on, I've lost the window now. Is DNS available now?
Yes.
There we go. That was an easy one. Let's see.
Are cloud filter and cloud reporting separate products? At the moment, yes. Going forward, we intend to roll them into one license as cloud reporting takes over from on-prem reporting.
And last one, I'll give you a third. Will your future plans for filtering still work with the police cyber alarm system, as this is a criteria of our insurers?
Yes and no, in that the police cyber alarm doesn't actually take any filter data. Police cyber alarm only is interested in firewall data. Our on-premise firewall will continue to support police cyber alarm, but they don't want any filtering data because there's nothing they can do with it. But yes, your on-prem device will support that.
And they only care about the firewall at the school premise?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing is they're picking up on which IP addresses are attacking schools, for example.
Yeah. So, if you've got a cloud filter device that goes home, that's outside the scope of cyber alarm anyway. Lovely. Right. Well, we're just about at time. I know we're all very busy and need to get on with the rest of our days. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for attending. You just bounce us on to the next slide, Tom. So yeah, we're going to share the recording afterwards. Any of those questions that if we did manage to get to yours and you still need to know an answer on that, feel free to email through to either inquiries or if you're an existing customer, your support or customer success contact. And obviously any other questions or anything we can help with as well, use the email address on screen. We also got QR code, which seems to be the easiest way to send a link in Zoom. So that's for more information on Smoothwall Cloud Filter. We will be at the Bet Show next week. Both myself and Tom are there all 3 days.
Yeah, we are warming up our vocal cords for it and the buttons of our feet right now.
Yeah, that's why we sat down to get some rest in. So yeah, we'd love to see you at Bet. Feel free to stop by the Smoothwall stand. We'll have the usual fun games and entertainment there.
Coffee and comfy seats, which I think are important.
There we go. So yeah, but thank you very much. Really appreciate you all taking this time to speak with us and to learn more about Cloud Filter, and look forward to speaking to you all soon. Thank you very much.